Okay, so I'll get started then. Good evening, everyone. My name's Amanda. I'm a second-year medical student at the University of Toronto, and I've had the pleasure of working with Accepted Together over the last couple of years and have helped a bunch of students, and I find it very rewarding. And so hopefully this session can help you, and if I can be of further assistance down the line, feel free to reach out. There's a QR code at the corner of each of my slides, and that gives you access to my profile if you want to learn a little bit more about what I offer and more details about my background. That's all on the Accepted Together website as well. Okay, so just a bit of housekeeping information. So as I mentioned, it's going to be recorded. I see the question in the chat about whether the recording will be available after. I'm not too sure, so if maybe the admin could inform you, that would be great. But I'll go through an agenda kind of about just an outline about what I'll be talking about, but it will be a little bit about just general tips and tricks for interviews. We'll go through kind of a sample problem together, and then also I'll tell you a little bit about me and what I offer through Accepted Together. But if you have more questions, as I mentioned, you can contact General Accepted Together, or you can send me like a direct message through the website as well. So I just mentioned the agenda. Okay, so a little bit about me. Here's my picture when I got my stethoscope. That was a very exciting day. As I mentioned, I'm second-year student at U of T. And before that, I did 3 years of undergrad at Queen's in kinesiology. So it was a very small program. I don't know too many people in my med class now that came from that program. So if you're in kin, reach out. And then a little bit of like non-academically about me. I used to do former competitive synchronized skating. So there's a picture. I know a lot of people haven't heard of the sport, but it's kind of as if like figure skating and synchronized swimming had a baby. So I was, afforded great opportunities traveling the world representing Canada through that. And I am a big foodie, so living in Toronto is a great scene for that. So if anyone has really great recommendations, seriously put them in the chat and I'll add it to my long list. And then, as I mentioned, I have been doing teaching and tutoring for a very long time. I actually founded my own company for STEM tutoring for high school students, and then I've been working with prospective applicants for the last 2 years as well. Okay, let me just check the chat, see if there's any questions yet. I don't see any. Okay, so, oh, the numbers got a little screwed up. That's okay. So just some general tips and tricks for interviews. I think this applies to, any school you're interviewing at. I don't think I actually mentioned, I also interviewed at Queen's as well. So I am familiar with the MMI format as well as the MPI format that's used at U of T. So kind of going on that vein, sounds basic, but really understanding the format and practicing accordingly. So one type of question can be asked, in multiple interview formats, and based on the timing that you're given and the platform in which you'll be delivering your interview is going to change, how you answer that question and how much maybe you're able to elaborate or how other things. So how can you find out what the format is? It's a little bit dynamic because in the last couple of years it's been virtual, asynchronous, and we're probably slowly moving back to in-person interviewing. So really staying up to date on the specific school's website is probably the best way to go. And then all of us at Accepted Together should be updated on the most, recent formats. So talking to people that have interviewed in various formats in previous years is helpful, but you want to make sure that that is actually the format that's being used for your interview, of course. Another general tip would be to brainstorm about personal anecdotes and then also categorize those experiences into, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the CanMeds roles. U of T also has their clusters. So kind of thinking about not just, okay, what are my experiences and how am I going to talk about them, but where do they kind of fit in within that framework, right? Is this experience highlighting that I'm a communicator? Is this, experience highlighting that I showed empathy here, etc. So I made kind of a master sheet, and I had different headings, and had, 2 to 3 experiences under each heading, so that it's hard to predict what you're going to be asked, but I tried to cover all my bases, because you always feel better and more confident if you have, almost rehearsed your answers. So similar to that, if you research the school, you're going to find out, what they value, because although there's that broad CanMEDS framework, you can kind of see the mission and the values of each school. For example, U of T is very explicit in what they're looking for, and you want to tailor that. So for that specific interview for U of T, you want to be talking about their clusters. And because if you think about, how their marking scheme looks, it's going to involve, did this applicant hit X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z are going to be coming from those clusters. So you want to just set yourself up in the best way possible. Another underrated tip, I would say, is to stay up to date with current events. And so it can be as simple as, watching 15 minutes of the news, reading the newspaper. Just think about what are hot topics right now, controversial topics that they could, ask an ethics question about. I think for U of T specifically, Indigenous health is one of those topics that I focused on, 2S LGBTQIA plus communities, and different things that are going on within healthcare mainly. But just knowing, obviously, the landscape of the world and what's going on will just help you seem more well-rounded and up to date. So always a good idea and a small investment that has a big impact. And then lastly, and I think this is the most important, is be you. And what I mean by that is oftentimes when I'm interviewing with students, and I totally had this problem and probably still do, is when you're in an interview setting, you want to sound really professional, you want to use big words, you want to, come across a certain way, and you want to almost answer the question how you think, like what you think they want to hear. And so when I, give a sample question to a student, I let them answer, I let them do their thing, but then I say, try again. What if this wasn't an interview and we were just in a conversation on the street? Now answer the question again. And almost every single time, I don't think I have any exceptions, the answer is so much better when you're just conversational. You don't have those internal stakes, I guess. So really answer, even take a second, and rather than sometimes we have that automatic switch within us where I'm in an interview, I have to, answer right away. I've just been asked a question. And that can kind of lead to like, oh, let me give the answer that I have rehearsed or the first thing that popped into my mind. But if you kind of shift that mindset into answering interview questions in a more conversational way and say, wait, what is my genuine answer to this question? If I was like not worried about judgment, not worried about getting into a program, what do I actually think? What is my opinion on this question? And that may involve taking a second, taking a pause, saying, that's a really interesting question. Let me just take a few moments and gather my thoughts. And that will enable you to get to that, more on the spot, but genuine, authentic answer. I think that's a very worthwhile approach. I see there's something in the chat. Okay. Okay, I think it's about the recording, so we're good. Does anyone have any questions so far? Feel free to write in the chat or just unmute. You can raise your hand, whatever works. Nothing yet. Okay, so I'll keep going. So, okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm hoping that it can be a little bit interactive. It's good practice. Is just kind of go through one sample question. And so if I could get participation in the chat, that would be amazing. If you want to just direct message me too, if you don't want other people to see, that's totally fine. But I'll post the question and then I'll give everyone like a minute to think about it. And then I'll talk about different ways that I would maybe approach the question. And then we can go through some of the answers that we've written in the chat together. So the prompt is as follows. So due to the shortage of physicians in rural communities, such as those in Northern Ontario, it has been suggested that medical programs preferentially admit students who are willing to commit a 2 or 3 year tenure in an underserviced area upon graduation. Discuss your stance on this proposal. Okay, so I'd really appreciate if people, put some input, whether that's in the chat or unmuting. Oops. And again, feel free to just direct message me, but take your time, think about it. Okay, hopefully you've all had a chance. I don't see anything in the chat. Hopefully, people type in, but that's okay. I'll help you through it. So just some this framework can be applied to most questions. Obviously, every question has nuance, but I wanted to give kind of a general approach. And so this is often a step that a lot of people forget, which is acknowledging why the question has been asked. And you don't have to always necessarily include this acknowledgement in your response per se, but by, just mentally noting, okay, why are they asking me about this? It will actually probably give you a better idea of what they're looking for, because there's a reason, there's a method behind their madness, right? They're not asking random questions. But sometimes it might be appropriate, and it might actually show that you're like one step ahead, that you're like very in tune with what the school's values are, by actually explicitly acknowledging. For example, in this question, thank you for this question. This is a very, poignant issue. And it's well known that the Northern and Indigenous communities are very underserviced. And so, this is very relevant and blah, 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 right? So you're saying, oh, I know why this is being asked. This is being asked because this is a pressing issue and we're looking for solutions. Okay. Oh, Andrea, writing these for the Q&A. Okay, I'll answer those after. Thank you for your questions. Okay. Oh, perfect. We're getting some responses. Thank you, everybody. I'll read those now because we're at answer the question. Okay. I'm not exactly sure how to say your name. Is it Hanifa, maybe? Sorry if I said that wrong. Feel free to correct me. She said, ultimately, physicians serve their communities. This suggestion makes sure a specific community is served. However, it may also create a bias in the process against applicants who don't want to take this route unless there are additional measures taken to ensure fairness. Great. So that kind of gets at my next point, which is there's different ways to tackle this question. There's more than the ones that I've given here, but just for sake of time, I was going to focus on two. And one of them is that kind of benefits and drawbacks approach, which I think you're touching on here, right? You're saying, on one hand, it can help the community and address that kind of acute pressing need for more practitioners within a geographic area. But on the other hand, the drawback, the con, is that for the applicants themselves, this might, for various reasons, an applicant might not be able to, move abroad. Maybe they have a family health crisis going on. There's an abundance of reasons, but so for these people that wouldn't be able to move, it would, very much lead to a disservice to them. So that's a great approach, right? Talking about our benefits and our drawbacks. And another approach you could take is kind of looking at it from a lens of different stakeholders or different levels. So at the individual level, at the systems level, at the societal level, policy, legal, there's all these different lenses in which you could tackle this question. So for example, we already touched on this, right? On the individual level, it might, be an unfair disadvantage or advantage depending on, where the applicant's at in their life and if they're able to move. On an individual level, though, it also might lead to better training because of, there's less resources in these areas. And so you learn, different skills. And then on a societal level, for example, or a community level, you're getting that, you're filling that void of that gap of those not having enough physicians in those areas. But by the same token, at a community level, if those people are only there for 2 to 3 years, you're kind of leading to that revolving door, and it's like this, constant changeover. And so it might not lead to the best, continuity of care or patient-physician relationship. So in those answers, and there's obviously more, we can talk about a policy level, we can talk about many, many different things. And if you have more ideas as I'm talking about this, feel free to put in the chat. I see I have a couple of direct messages. I'll read those in a second. But you can see that kind of gives you an organized approach, whether you take the, stakeholders or different levels angle, or whether you take the benefits and drawbacks. And of course, there's other approaches as well. But it keeps you organized, and it also shows that you're able to think in a systematic, organized way, and that you're able to see things from different perspectives, which is very important. So let me just take a moment and read some of the ideas from people in the chat. Good, good. So saying a lot of the things that I touched on. So it might lead to fragmented care, high physician turnover. It might help with health equity. Other people are talking about access. People are talking about good. Okay, so, and then I'm really liking that, while we take these different approaches, in the end, while we don't want to give a polarized approach, and I think or polarized opinion, and I think by taking any of these approaches, we're showing that we can see kind of multiple sides. So I don't think our answer would be polarized anyways. I think it's important to come to kind of an ultimate conclusion or propose some sort of solution. So maybe we can talk about, virtual care, and still addressing more, having more access, even if it's remote, for these populations, but not necessarily requiring practitioners to go into those communities. Or, there's tons of different solutions you could propose, but coming to some sort of like tying all the loose ends together is definitely recommended. And then I think this, everyone knows this, but personal example when possible. So I think it's a fine line between, you want to make yourself stand out. You want to, tell the panel why to choose you, but you don't want to make it seem forced or, if the example really doesn't fit and it's really a deviation, then I'd stay away from that. I actually think it can hurt you more than it can help you. But I think, again, if you make that kind of master sheet of anecdotes and categorizing them and knowing those kind of hot interview topics and making sure you have examples from each of them, I don't think you'll be in a situation where you'll be needing to use this really tangential experience. You'll have something that kind of fits naturally within the question. And then to close out the question, if you have time, I always encourage you to kind of bring it back to medicine. Obviously, this question was talking about, an issue in healthcare. So you don't really have to bring it back to healthcare, but some questions are very broad, or just general questions that don't necessarily pertain to the field or to your future career. So it's a good idea to kind of bring your answer back to applying it in the medical context, and then saying, how you will take this experience or how you'll build on these skills as in your future career as a medical student and as a physician and beyond. So just a nice way to close out your answer. Yeah, if there's any questions, feel free to put those in the chat as well. But I'm going to keep going. Okay. So now we're just a little bit about what I offer. And if you scan this again, there's much more. I just highlighted kind of the most popular ones. But so you can do a general consultation, which kind of we can do brainstorming for your experiences, sometimes categorizing them and kind of like, okay, so I did X, Y, and Z, but how can I talk about these? How can I, because that's really the art of interviewing is, a lot of applicants are super impressive, but it's the people that are able to really express it in a way that's organized and tailored to that school, to that program, that are successful. So happy to help with that general consult, and that's over like a video call through the platform. And then I have this is my most popular package. It's called Mastering the MMI or MPI, depending on where you're interviewing. And as I mentioned, I do have experience with both formats, so can be of help there. And it's 3 hours of time total. Most students choose to do two 90-minute sessions, but it's completely up to you. Some students do three 60-minute sessions. I find that the 90-minute sessions give us enough time to have enough, practice questions and feedback, and then enough time to apply that feedback. And I use a special program, like a technology website thing that helps time our answers, and it's really cool. I used it for my interviews, and it helps you really simulate the format, especially for U of T interviews. So I use that during all the live sessions of all my packages. And yeah, so that's that package. And then the interview boot camp is a little bit longer. So there's the 3 90-minute sessions. And if you wanted to do shorter sessions, that's totally flexible as well. Um, and then we have our last minute interview prep session. This is probably the second most popular. It's kind of just like, oh no, interview's really close. I don't have enough time, or I just want to tune up. I just want to do a couple practice questions, with someone live. That's the package for you. And yeah, I included a special discount for everyone on the call today. So if you want to take a screenshot of this, and if you reach out to me on the platform using this QR code or just going through the website by this Friday at midnight, I'm happy to offer you and honor this discount. And if there's, extenuating circumstances, I'm also happy to accommodate that. I've done so in the past. So just reach out. Ultimately, like I really genuinely love teaching and helping, and I feel incredibly fulfilled. So I want to make it work. If finances are a barrier, I'm really happy to work with you. Okay, and then a little bit of why choose me. So here are some reviews. There's more on the website that you can look at. But I think it goes to show that the people I've worked with have really enjoyed their sessions. I'm highly rated, and I'm quite experienced, having done 48 sessions of interviews. And then yeah, again, I think it goes to show for itself. I did get in on my first try after interviewing at multiple schools, and so have that expertise, I guess, in MMI as well as MPI styles. I'd welcome any questions you have. Oh, I see one in the chat.